This is the good stuff.
This is the good stuff. James, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's been a while. Been asking to come on for a long time.
I know. And just had to make you sweat a little bit.
I did. I left. I left for 6 months.
You fucked off. We had to, we just had to give you a bit of space, bit of time to go find yourself. And here we are.
And I still haven't found myself,
That's
but we're
right.
here.
I don't know if that's doable. First question for you before we do dive into that good stuff. What gets you out of bed in the morning?
Ooh, I can see internally you're smiling because we've spoken about this already and not allowed to say certain things.
It's my favourite question. You can say whatever the fuck you want.
Look, no, I can't. I can't say coffee and I can't say my alarm.
Oh, that's true.
So
That's true.
I've thought about it for a while and the beautiful answer would be to be better every day.
Good. What does that look like? How do you manifest goodness into your daily existence?
Whoa, that's a great question.
Thanks.
Have you been doing this for a while?
I've had some practice.
Yeah. How do I do that? I suppose just constantly wanting to learn, having that growth mindset. And it's I'm 26 now, and I feel like I'm a 42-year-old with the head that I have and the wisdom that I have. And, when I say this, it's not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but I feel like there's a lot of wisdom there. And then
Bit of self-praise, which we love.
bit of self-praise.
It's good for you.
As my dad told me, self-praise is no recommendation, but
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dad. But, yeah, just wanting to learn, just wanting to take in whatever you see and do and who you speak to. Doesn't mean you have to act on it. You can take it in and you can filter it and then spit out what you want out of your mind or however you spit it out, and take the nuggets of gold that you get from each conversation or experience.
Have you always been like that? Have you always been growth orientated?
Nah. If you had met me when I was, maybe 18, 19, you'd probably laugh at me.
Wouldn't have laughed.
No, you wouldn't have laughed. We're all different. And I think my mindset when I was that age was to be very conservative, very restrictive, and just stick to, saving money, sacrifice. Let's get a house. I'm not going out this Saturday night. Even if not to spend the whole night out, but not even see friends, or let's just save money and let's just get that house.
Yeah. Where'd that conservative nature come from?
Probably parents.
Yeah.
And that's, a lot of them speaking about what they did when they were my age. And then obviously that's all I knew. That's what I was growing up with.
And you not wanting to repeat that, or you wanting to follow what they did?
Yeah, I suppose you idolise your parents and what they've done, and you see what they've built together.
Yep.
And everything they have got, and you go, oh wow, that looks pretty good, doesn't it? Maybe I want to do that too.
Yep.
But then I think over a few years, sort of that 18 through to 23 maybe, I just went in a sort of downward trajectory in my own mental space, to a point where I was like, something needs to change.
Yeah. Talk me through that downward trajectory. Was there self-awareness around it? Was there understanding around it? Or was it kind of like you were spiraling down, you didn't really know what or why?
I couldn't see it at the time. I think it was festering. It was bubbling away. And there'd been a lot of different experiences in my life, whether it was bullying in high school, whether it was the feeling of not feeling good enough, which is my whole belief now, which I'm working through.
Yep.
So everything links back to that, which is quite fascinating. When my psychologist, I'll talk to her and she'll go, remember it links back to this? And you're like, damn it, I didn't think it did. But there's that. There was just a whole bunch of things that had happened and I'd just pushed it down for so long, and it was just bubbling and pushing up, and to a point where, I think the catalyst was when I ended the relationship with my previous partner. And then I put myself into a spiral after that. Just to a pretty bad, depressive state. And I'll always thank my parents in that week that it was Christmas week, actually. Great time to do what I did. They knew I was battling, so they just said, nah, you come with us. And they were going to New Zealand for a week.
Yep.
And they just said, you're coming. So they took me with them, and I think I'll always thank them for that. I I probably should verbally say it more to them. But internally, I always thank them for doing that.
We'll send them the link after the podcast airs.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, Dad will watch this. I can guarantee that.
Love that. Shout out to your old man.
Yeah. But yeah, I'll always thank them for that, for taking me, because who knows what could have happened in that week.
Share as much as you want, but talk through like your headspace and where you're at the start of that week compared to the end of that week and like what it did for you.
Poor. The start of the week, it was, you're sort of sitting there going, what am I going to do? Because Mum and Dad are away.
Yep.
My brother's away. I have no one here with me. It's just me, and I'm going to have my thoughts. So you're thinking all the things that you can do probably to yourself.
Yeah.
Because, there's all those things that have happened, the not good enough feeling comes back, even though any relationship was my choice. And then I still felt not good enough. So, the start of the week, it was that. After I came back from New Zealand, it was a bit of a better space, because once I got to the airport in Melbourne, you see all the bookstores.
Yeah.
And I walked in and, you're just grumpy, you're sad, everything. And this bright orange book was glaring at me.
I know the book.
And, hey?
I'm sure I know the book.
Oh, absolutely you do. Mark Manson, what a great man. And
big fan.
His book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, just grabbed me, and I read that in a day and just powered through it. And as soon as I read that's when the start changed.
Yep.
And by the end of the week, I'd seen family friends, and they'd chatted to me, and love them dearly, but, it was a lot of let's fix this instead of let's listen and have that empathy. But there were still some nuggets there that you could take away, and I think that was the start of that little bit of, okay, I'm starting to feel better, because I wasn't eating like I was eating a meal a day. And Mum and Dad were like stressed as, because I was like, you see me.
So you're saying you ruined their holiday?
Basically, yeah. I ruined their week that they were seeing their friends that I hadn't seen in about 5 years.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think it was ruined. I think they were grateful that I was with them.
Well, as a new parent, I've no doubt that they were grateful that they were able to help in some capacity.
Absolutely. Couldn't imagine if I have a kid and you're away on a trip and they're battling, you're probably feeling worse off. At least if they're with you, you know what they're doing and you can see what's happening.
Yeah,
so.
And they give you the space to enjoy an aspect of travel, the perspective shift that it allows, and different part of the world, different environment. As well as the importance of environment. How do you look back? And obviously we've got a lot more to talk about, but how do you, like, sitting here today, reflecting on that period of your life, how do you feel about it? What are like the main things that come up in terms of like what you've learned, and you talked at the start about wanting to be better. How is that manifested to now?
Or what I've learned, I think, as easy as it's said and done, stress less about things, I listened to Hamish McLaughlin on The Imperfects the other day, and like what he's been through, and he's always had this mindset, there's no problem that's too big or small. There'll always be a way to solve it. Whatever you need, we'll find a way. And I think early days, I would grab a little thing, tiny thing, and then blow it up massively in my own head and stew on it, and pros, cons, and like, what's the worst thing, what's the best thing, and just go through a whole mental episode within myself just for this tiny thing. Whereas now it's like, we'll solve it.
Yeah, 100%.
Carry on.
I mean, it's maybe a little flippant for me to say, but we don't have any real problems. Like, and like for the majority of us, and I'm reading a book about a guy that at 47 found out he had cancer, stomach cancer, and the book basically chronicles his demise, and he lives with the North for 6 months, and he basically kind of says, I want this to be my lasting legacy. And anyone that's read Tuesdays with Maury is a very similar book, and one of the lines, I literally read it half an hour before you got here, and it was just along the lines of like, if I only knew then what I know now, my problems wouldn't have seemed so massive. And it's, I don't know, death's one of those things that we don't talk about or don't confront very often. And I carry a memento mori coin in my pocket every now and again, just as a little reminder. But it's just, in the scheme of things, is this something I'm going to worry about 5-10 years? And if the answer is no, then maybe, yeah, which is a lot easier said than done.
That's probably the other thing when you talk about death. You know, I hadn't dealt with the trauma of my nan passing away when I was 16, 17 years old.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know how to. It never happened in my life.
Yeah.
And that was buried away. And then my granddad then passed away a few years later. And then more recently, my pa, who I was incredibly close with, had passed away too. And like that, from looking back to how I handled my nan to how I handled my pa, I was like, you realise that death's a part of life. It's going to happen.
It's one thing we all have in common.
You know, we get on this earth, we do what we want to do, and then it's all over. Yep. And then after that, who knows? From there, whatever you believe, you go from there.
Yeah. Yeah, so how have those experiences shaped how you live your life now?
It's still a work in progress, for sure. Don't get me wrong.
It'll always be.
I'm not sitting here trying to preach to people that, hey, I've figured out life.
Well, like, sorry to interrupt you, but like this is the thing I love about these conversations, because you have it, and like you have these conversations with skin in the game. We're not talking from the finish line. Like, you know, you talk to people you look up to, Mark Manson, except like those kind of people. You go, oh, thought leader, figured it all out, knows exactly what's up. You're like, they're in the thick of it just like we are. And I think as an adult and as a maturing adult, when you realise that and you realise, fuck, everyone's just winging it, everyone's just doing their best, everyone's, you know, everyone's living through the human experience, which is good and bad and suffering and pain and, you know, and goodness and happiness and joy and all of the good and bad and frustrating stuff. It's just you kind of, I think, or it allows me to kind of be a little easier on myself.
Yep.
Do you feel the same?
It's a good way to put it, for sure. And that's where I'm at now, is being okay with, you know, if I've mapped out a day where, okay, I'm waking up at 5, I'm walking the dog, going for a dip, going to the gym, studying, getting my lectures done. And then at the end of the day, if I look back and go, oh, actually, I didn't walk the dog this morning, but hey, I walked her this afternoon. Like, previous years, I would be so, like, hard on myself and say, you didn't do this. Why didn't you do this? But now it's like, you did it at a different time. Who cares? It's done.
I always like if you wake up feeling 40% and you know do 40% of what you need to do, you've had a 100% day. You've done as much as you could give, and it's we use it in the gym here. It's just like, manage your resources, but don't quit. Like, do the best you can with what you've got, and, you know, show up again tomorrow and repeat until you eventually cark it and you've lived a good life. Let's go back a little bit. Talk to me. What was James like going through school, and what pathway did you follow to what you're doing now, which we'll obviously talk about?
Yeah, I think James now loves trying to think about what primary school James was like, because you see photos and he's got this cheeky grin on him and he doesn't really care about everything, and he's just a little smart ass and has fun. And then high school comes, and then, you know, I would say a lot of people would relate to high school being painful, and a lot of, not everyone, but a lot of people would say that, you know, there's bullying or there's, you know, events that happen in high school because of varying factors. But for me personally, it was, the bullying, and the not fitting in with groups. You know, I was sporty, so there was a sporty group, but never felt I could fit in. So then I was like, okay, I'll go try hang out with the people who are interested in computer games or IT stuff. And then you'd sit there and go, I can't talk about this stuff because I don't do it.
Yeah.
And then, the bullying was there. And even though, you know, and I've spoken to the guys who were saying the things to me, and I've seen them, one in particular, and like we had a huge chat about it one night, and we just like were crying and just hugging it out at the end of it.
Cute.
But we did both.
Was it cathartic?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. It was good. And we both didn't realise, because it was coming my way, about being bigger, being fat. And then he was a redhead, so back in high school it was,
That's right, yeah.
You're a bloody ranger and all this stuff. And I didn't think it was I was just responding to what I was getting thrown at me.
Yeah.
And then, as he said to me, he goes, yeah, but you don't realise what you were saying.
You're both just like poking the fire.
Yeah,
and
both poking it. And I always felt I was the victim and never thought from his end.
Yeah.
And then for him to say to me, mate, you like what you said hurt me, I was like, oh.
Perspective is a wonderful thing. Perception's a wonderful thing as well. Like, adolescence is such a shit show. In and of itself, like, because you're trying to figure out who you are, build some awareness, understand all this shit that's going on, and then you're trying to figure out how the world works at the same time, and you add other people into that, and it's just a mix. It's just like a melting pot of chaos.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Of emotional chaos.
That's a great way to put it.
And at the end of the day, you know, you don't know what you don't know. Like, you look back now, you go, like, I look back, and you know, I'm not big on regret, but I go, oh, I wish I knew this, or I wish I was able to do this, or I wish I was able to approach this in a certain way, because it would have given me, or it would have enabled me so much more now. But then you can also go like the not being too hard on yourself. Like I said before, you meet life with where you're at. So, you know, you could have read Subtle Art of Giving a Fuck when you're 18, and you could have been like, this book's shit. Or you could read it when you're, you know, 22, 23, and you go, all right, this is life changing. And you know, I love rereading books, because you're rereading it like it's a different book because you're different, and you get to experience it a whole nother time. Like this book I'm reading, it's a once a year book for me, and my relationship with life and death changes as I change.
Yep.
So how did you, like let's go back to that bullying stuff, is like kind of reconciled that with one of the people. What was the immediate feeling, maybe not necessarily at the time, but kind of in the days and weeks after that conversation? Was it a feeling of kind of peace, or was it a feeling of like still things that were unresolved?
I think it was nice to speak to him about it and actually iron it out from both ends. I suppose there's never a real peace, because the only peace you'll get is having peace within yourself. Just because the words were said and you've made peace with the person doesn't mean that the feelings of, oh shit, I'm fat, or I'm overweight, or, you know, there's still that continually bubbling away. And I think now I'm at a point where, you know, I've just come back, and we'll probably get to that soon, from a 6-month hiatus from Melbourne.
Great use of hiatus.
And, you know, I've put on 6 kilos through all those travels, and, you know, not really committing to exercise, but it was a nice break for me. And I've come back, and I'm back here training, and I'm like, yeah, so what? Like, I'm 6 kilos heavier. I know I can get back to that. It'll take some time, but I'm a bit more self-compassionate to that stuff, and a bit more kinder to myself in that regard. Not saying that it's perfect, but...
Oh, it's an interesting, like, I won't use the term balancing act, but it's an interesting, like, almost like juxtaposition between being kind to yourself and being disciplined. It's like they're conflicting thoughts or conflicting ideas, and you like both are important, and both are necessary to live a fulfilling life, I think. But you almost kind of need to go, all right, what do I need right now? Do I need a cuddle, or do I need to kick up the bum? And that's something you're getting better. You're like, you know, evidently getting better at that. That's built or driven by self-awareness. So if you're more aware of what you need, you can go, you know what? I need a cuddle. I need to go take 6 months to have a break and chill out and not escape, but remove myself from current environments. And, you know, I'm sure you'll get to a point in next week or a month or 2 months where you're like, all right, now I've got to knuckle down and kick up the bum. And
well, the thing that I thought of just then was 2019, I was like 103 kilos, biggest I've ever been. And I was like, I need a kick up the bum. And for me, it was this program that was happening. It was like a 6-week, 9 kilos in 6 week thing. And I know health professionals go, you can't do that. That's horrendous. But it taught me like all those little bits of discipline that you can do to make a change, and that if you really put your mind to it, like change can happen pretty quick. However, in that weight loss sense and sticking to foods and stuff, and it's not sustainable what I was doing, but there's that point, and now and that was that end goal driven. Whereas now I'm back and I'm like, no, this is the journey that I'm on. Like, yeah, there's going to be a day where, you know, I don't know what the word is, but the craving that I get is for lollies, like a bag of lollies. And I'm like, there's going to be days where I just want a big party mix of Alan's lollies and I just go and get them. Like, and that's okay. As long as I'm not doing that every single day.
Yeah. I mean, the way I look at health and fitness and well-being is like that challenge that you did is an experience that if properly, if you allow it to educate and teach you, it gives you more tools in your toolbox, right? So, you know, if you get back from a 6-month trip and you go, know what, I need to kick up the bum, I need like a short-term rapid change, then you can lean back on that and go, I know this isn't a long-term thing, but it almost like kickstarts your engines and it gets it. You know, I love the idea of like action drives motivation. Like, we're not necessarily inherently motivated. Like, you have ups and downs, you have times where you want to go do the thing, but most of the time you need something to kickstart that. And if it's a restricted eating plan or a smash yourself in the gym for 3 weeks and it allows you to get moving and then it's part of that bigger picture, brilliant.
Yep. That's a good way to put it.
It's the tool for that particular job at that particular point in time, because I think the sustainability side of things is almost overrated from a training perspective. Is like, not overrated. I need to be careful how I say this. I need to articulate it better. But it's not overrated, but it can be overrated as the only solution. Yeah. Because you have to meet it where you're at, give yourself what you need. And sometimes there needs to be times where you just put, balls to the wall and go flat chat at something for a period of time, right? Like, you're studying masters at the moment, and there's going to be a time where you have to go, you know what, social life, health, etc. It's going to have to, be pushed to the side for this week while you get your 6 assignments done that you were meant to do over the last 12 weeks. Like, this is how life works. We need to swing, to a particular thing at times. And I think the way I look at the rest of life is about building our capacity to do so well, and do so in a way that doesn't ruin you, that you just fall off the wagon and stop training forever.
Well, that's perfectly how you put it, because for me it was, okay, you had this end goal of 9 kilos, and then by the end of that 6 weeks, like, I lost the 9 kilos and you feel great, and the Monday morning you go, oh, now what do I do now? Whereas what you've just said is that journey. It's like, you can have this kickstart for 3-4 weeks, but then post that, let's then continue to like not manipulate or change the eating habits, and increase your calorie count slowly or whatever it might be. So it's not just I was eating 1,000 calories a day to I'm going back to 2,500, and it's blown out of proportion. It's let's do the journey side of it, not just stop. What do I do now?
Here's the analogy I've been working on in my head for the last 27 seconds. Is you played video games before?
Oh, a long time ago.
Right. So you like the video game is a finite game, right? Like, it has a clear start, clear rules, clear parameters, clear end. Life isn't like that. Life is an infinite game. So there's no rules outside of societal norms, etc. There's no clear ending apart from when you die, but there's no like place you need to get to. Like a video game, there's this one big journey, right? Which, you could chronologically look at anyone's life and go, okay, there's a big journey from inception to, what's the opposite of inception? Death? Outception? I just made something up. And whatever happens between point A and point B doesn't, really matter, but we get to choose which side quests we go on along that journey. So if you decide to, let's go lose 10 kilos real quick, why the fuck not? Let's go learn how to play the piano. Like, we get to choose what things we do. And ultimately, if it might take us a long period of time to get back onto the main path out of that side quest, but when we do get back onto that path, if there's lessons and clear learning and enjoyment and challenge that come from it, then we're better off for it. So now you can look back at those periods of time and go, maybe it wasn't the best, and maybe health professionals will, kick up stink, but at the end of the day, it's your side quest, it's your life, you get to do what you want. If you want to go fucking eat lollies, mate, go load up on some Allens.
Oh, I have, don't worry, it's happened. It's happened. But like you said about choice, I don't know if it was you prior to me leaving. I think we've argued about this. Life's about choice. You're the one that's in the power, and you have the choices to go and do what you want. And now I've said this to numerous people, and I love the feedback you get from different people. And they're like, yeah, but what if someone's been born into a criminal family, or they don't have a home their whole life? I'm like, yeah, okay, I get that. And this could go down a horrendous path for this podcast. But, and I don't know, I could be flippant. This is a flippant thing.
Great use of flippant.
Could be flippant here.
It's a good word. And
if everyone has a choice in life, I have a choice. I'm a privileged man. I will put my hand up and say I've had a privileged life. 100% admit that. But say if we're using a homeless person on the street, do they have the same choice to try and make their life better that I do? Or is it separate, or is it different, or are they powerless?
Is that rhetorical, or are you asking me what I think?
No, I'm asking as well.
So they have to meet that choice, or they have to meet the choice with where they're at, right? So I'm very similar, very privileged life, very lucky. I'm fucking sitting in a chair talking about shit that doesn't really matter, right? Like
I'm glad that you think I don't matter. Thanks, mate.
You know what I mean? I'm joking. You know what I mean? Like we're talking about like the actualization side of life, right? You'd know it, you would have studied it, but Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We have, it's actually on the wall over there, so I'm going to shift my gaze so I don't fuck it up. But we have our physiological needs, which is survival, right? We need to eat, we need to sleep, we need to hydrate. We have our safety needs. We need somewhere to live, somewhere to, to lay our head at night, somewhere to, keep us dry from the rain and all of nature's stuff. And then there's the love and belonging and community and connection side of things. And then there's self-esteem and self-awareness, self-compassion that you mentioned before. And then there's self-actualization, which is like, all right, well, I've got everything I need. How can I create fulfillment and meaning and enjoyment and appreciation and challenge, and how do I build that into my life? And the homeless guy that is sitting there and going, well, it's his choice. There's two ways to look at it, right? You can look at, it's not his fault where he is and where he's at. 100% believe that. But it's his responsibility to do something about it. Like between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies growth and freedom. And this guy, as an example, has the opportunity to go, all right, well, do I just go, fuck my life, this is shit, I was born into a family that didn't support me, whatever. Or does he go, how do I take a step forward? How do I, move up the ladder of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? How do I, and it's difficult because all these things happen at once, but how do I, maybe guarantee is a bad word, but how do I give myself physiological stability? How do I ensure I know where my next meal is coming from? How do I do this? And a big part of it's asking for help and finding support networks. And, there are lots of people who want to do good. I truly believe that. And someone in that position, there's avenues out. And saying this from a privileged position, so I'm not at all trying to understand exactly what it's like. I'm trying to understand, but I'm not going to know exactly what it's like. Yep. But you've almost just got to try and connect with other people and try and build the physiological needs, the safety needs, and then you build in the connection needs, and then you build in the esteem needs. And obviously we live in a world that it's way harder than it should be for people to get out of those situations. And we probably don't need to sit here and talk about the downfalls of capitalism, etc., because we'll be here all day. But I don't know. I think that person has a choice. Like we have a choice. Like we have choices every day to move ourselves closer to the person we want to be or further away. And it's the culmination of all of those choices that determines who we are, the life we live, how we spend our time, all of that kind of stuff. And doesn't necessarily make it easy. It's not easy, but it's a don't know, for me, that's the pathway out to self-actualization, to, I like using the word, like transcend and include. Like we transcend, like I'm watching my girls grow up at the moment, and like, 10 minutes ago, it feels like they were little potatoes and they were babies and they did nothing and they just cried and pooed and stuff. And now Billy's running around saying dada and stuff. And it's like, as Billy develops from a potato to a baby to a toddler, and as she, Lucy's now 3 or almost 3, and she's a little kid, she transcends that previous version of herself but includes it. Like she still was a toddler at some point, and I'm a 30-year-old version of that. I've had 30 years of transcending and including, and all of the decisions I make from this point out will determine what I become over the next 20 or 30 years. So yeah, even though some people aren't as lucky, and luck comes down to it way more than we would like to admit, like anyone listening to this podcast is immensely fortunate, and more fortunate than the majority of the human existence up until this point. And I think with that luck comes a responsibility to make your own world a better place, a place where you love to be, and then the rest of the world a better place.
Yep.
Discuss.
There's a lot there. I think the first person that comes to mind was a guy I worked with at Homesglen, and he did a lot of that social work, and he's seen everything from top to bottom. And I've said some challenging things to him, and he's come back at me and said, basically, in a sense, you've lived a privileged life and you don't really get all of this.
Yeah.
I don't, like you said, I don't understand it, but I will try my hardest.
And I don't know if there's a lot of utility in that. Like, obviously there's learning that comes from that response, but I don't know if there's a lot of utility from the, like, you haven't lived it so you can't understand. It's like, this person's you're trying to understand and trying to meet him at a point where you can make a difference and you can have some input and you can contribute in some way. It's like there's not, I don't know, the way I look at life and decision making is like, all right, where's the utility in this? How can we do something about it? And you'll never understand. It's just not helpful.
It's, the other thing that I came back to, and you explained it better than how I phrased the question, was that homeless person has the choice to change, like, their future, or change, yes, it's not their fault that they're there, but okay, now they have the choice to go and make various choices to benefit their life or better their life however they want. I think that's, and
sure, they don't have the safety nets, and they don't have the fallbacks that we would, or that we do, but it almost doesn't matter from where they're at, because what's the other choice? Like, there's no utility in going, fuck it, like, and some people, that's the sad reality of some people's existence. They decide that life's not worth living, or they decide that what's the point in trying, or do they decide that people settle for wherever they're at. I'm going to butcher the quote because I haven't written it up on my wall, but it's like, one of the saddest things is that everyone has their reasons. Everyone has their reasons why they didn't quit their job, or why they stayed with a partner they didn't love, or why they didn't go and do the training session, or why they didn't start the course, or whatever it is. And it's like, again, it's not their fault, but it's their responsibility what they do with that choice.
Yep, 100%. And to extend on that, one of my first mentors post that week in New Zealand who I reached out to, you might have actually played against him, Brad Sykes.
Shout out.
Yes. I'll
get him on the podcast.
You should. He's a great man, very good man, and helped me in that initial phase post me getting the relationship, and got me to this point. And he spoke to me about this little, I don't know what you want to call it, this diagram, or whatever you want to picture it. If you can imagine the word choice at the top, we've all got the choice, and then we make that choice, and then you've got kind of 3 responses that you can do to it. You can either go down the left hand side and play a poor me card and go, oh, well, why does this keep happening to me? Like, I've made this choice and then this has happened. Oh, why does this happen to me? Like, it's not fair. Life's not fair. Or you can take the right hand avenue and say, and blame and go, that was your fault, Lockie. Like, you caused me to do this, or you caused it to end badly, or whatever it was, and you blame people. Or the third option through the middle is that no matter the outcome of the choice, you take responsibility for that choice.
Yeah.
The initial choice, take responsibility for it and go, okay, that didn't work out. What can I do better next time? And what he preached to me and now I preach to others, like, Jess, who's now at the gym. That was one of the first things I said to her when I started coaching it, and she was like, whoa, that was big. Like, that's really hit me. And if you take that ownership of that choice, 100%, okay, I won't say 100%, 99.9% of the time, good things happen if you take accountability for it.
Yeah. Well, things happen, and like 100% of the time things happen, and there's utility in one of those responses, right? And even if bad things happen, like, I don't know, I love the idea that nothing's good or bad, it is as we see it. Something horrible can happen, but we can decide, or we can choose to look at it and go, all right, how did this make me a better person? How did I learn from this? How is this a good thing? And it can be something horrible, but you can look at it and go, how did it make me better? Or how will it make me better? And automatically you're moving towards the person you want to be. Like, we all, I don't know, I would like to think that we all want to experience life more, and we want to connect with people on deeper levels, and we want to do better things, and we want to contribute more. There's only one of those three options that allows you to do that. And I think being self-aware enough to be able to know that you're not going to make the right decision every time, and you're going to fuck up, and you're going to choose to blame or choose to throw the poor me card out. If we understand that, which we're all gonna do it. If we understand that you're all gonna do it, then you can catch yourself when you do, and you go, like, as a really front of mind example, Lucy got bitten by a dog the other day, and we can respond and go, fuck them, it's their fault, et cetera, but the only real utility is how do we support and help Lucy overcome this and to move forward. And I have no doubt that in the wash up, it'll help us be better parents, and it'll help us have a better connection with Lucy, and it'll help her understand that occasionally the world kind of doesn't work out the way you want it to work, and that's okay. The thing that happens isn't the most important thing, it's what you do with it. And again, it's the kind of caveat to this is, like, it's easier to say it from a place of privilege, from a place where you can't really fail. But this is the only, this lens is the only one in which I can experience the world, and you're the same, and everyone can only experience the world through their own experience and their own lens. So I think it almost comes back to the question of, like, what can I do about it? What choice do I have? And if we understand what's within our control and what's outside of our control, then there's one path. And there's like 4 or 5 things that are inside of our control, and everything else is outside of it. So let's just focus on that.
Don't get me wrong, like, we all fall into the other brackets sometimes. We all.
Not true. I am perfect. I haven't fucked up ever.
That's true. Lockie's perfect.
Daily, mate. Daily.
Virtus is the greatest place. Please come to Virtus.
Get around it. Shout out.
But we all end up in those left and right columns all the time. It's just a part of life. But the difference is being aware sooner or later, hopefully within a short period of time, that you reflect and go, oh yeah, okay, maybe I was like blaming KP for the dog biting Lucy's face, for example. Like, it's your fault, KP, but that's just an example. But like,
it's and then I know it's like, again, on the responsibility front, it's our responsibility to build frameworks within our lives, whether it be the environments we spend our time in, the people we spend our time with, how we think about things, how we reflect on things, what our belief systems are, what actions we take. It's to build those things up so that when we something throws us off kilter, we have these frameworks to lean back into to get us back on track. I'm sure you can talk or think about, you know, the James that went to New Zealand versus the James now. Like, how much more capable are you now at overcoming, you know, hypothetically, if you were to separate from someone the way you did, like, your coping mechanisms are significantly more improved now, right?
Well, yeah, I hope so. I hope it doesn't get to that point, since I am now in a relationship. I hope it doesn't get to that point.
But the thing, if it does, and it might, then you do the best you can.
Yeah.
And I think that's ultimately what life's all about, is to know that you're going to fuck up and know that things aren't going to work, but all you can do is what you can do in that moment.
Yeah, 100%.
Talk me through your education. You've done some things.
Oh, yeah, I've done a few things. I've started some things and not finished them too.
Nothing wrong with that.
But yeah, I think post high school, I left end of year 11 and went to Cedar and did the sport program there, and then finished that, and then had no idea what I'd want to do. So I just jumped into a sport management degree, like every person that loves sport goes.
So that's my off-the-cuff remark for exercise science. It's like, everyone likes sport, just does exercise science.
Pretty much. And I was like, well, Dad worked in business his whole life. I love sport. Maybe I could do both.
Yeah.
I got a semester in. Really didn't like it. I think failed my accounting unit, and I think that was like the catalyst to go, yeah, you got to get out of this. So I got out. Then tried to do a teaching degree, and I got a couple of semesters in, and I just wasn't enjoying it. So I jumped out of that, tried to work full-time internal sales. That was horrendous. Post that degree at a timber yard, so I had no idea about any of the products. Got out of that, and then what my heart had always wanted to do for a long time was to do the sports media course degree. And I'd seen it, you know, probably post my sport management degree. I saw it pop up, and I made the choice to go teaching. And I just sort of said, nah, I just want to do this. Like, I really want to. And I inquired off my own bat. And yeah, they were taking students. So I went to Mum and Dad and I was like, hey guys, I think I want to try my third course, third degree. And they sort of sat me down at the table and eyeballed me and said, this is not your last chance, but you need to finish this.
How's that Hextet going?
Oh, don't get me started. Don't get me started. I'm glad that I don't see it for now. But yeah, they just said you need to finish this. So I did a sports media degree for 3 years, and had so much fun. Much fun doing that. Met some wonderful people. Had incredible support from the course manager, the lecturers. It was great. You'd rock up Tuesday morning for a lecture, and shout out to Sammy Duncan, who does a lot of sports stuff. We'd just talk footy for the first 45 minutes about Essendon losing on the weekend and how Collingwood are great, and it was so much fun. But I learnt so much, met heaps of people, did some really good assignments, and it just gave me a grounding that I knew I could apply myself to do a degree. But finished that 2018, and then had a choice to either work for Table Tennis Victoria, which was, they were fantastic. I did my internship there, and for a state body, if you compare AFL Victoria to Table Tennis Victoria, AFL Vic's got, who knows, hundreds of employees, thousands. Table Tennis Victoria, a state body, had 3.
Wow.
CEO, just a general internal manager, and like a participation officer. That was it.
That's fascinating.
For a state body,
it's not the largest sport going around.
No, but for a state body, and that if you look at all the competitions and all the places around Victoria that have clubs, it's actually really big. But for a state body to have 3, it was small. So I had a great time. I just did whatever I wanted. Like, I was free to express various marketing abilities, basically. And then they offered me a part-time job, but also Holmes Glen TAFE offered me a full-time job. So I had a choice. Again, do I take the full-time job, which probably wasn't what I wanted to do or loved, or go part-time and then try and find a couple of days' work somewhere else? Now, this James wasn't aware yet, of himself, and he
Talking
decided
about yourself in third person. We got to that part.
we got
it
to
usually
it.
happens later than 45 minutes in.
He took the full-time job path, and
Mhm.
after 2 years of working there, I had another, basically a mental breakdown, because I clashed with my manager, and she basically and I'm playing the blame game, but I was treated in a way that I just felt horrendous about working there, and just said to Dad, sat with him, he's like, mate, just resign. Like, we're here to support you, and
Yep.
it was that little tick of, I'm here, I love you, I support you.
Just gave you the permission to do what you wanted to do anyway.
Basically, yeah. So I quit that, and then I took like another 6 months off. This was COVID had just about hit, so we were locked down, so it was not like we were doing a heap anyway.
Yep.
And by this point, Sykesy had handballed me off to a beautiful man called James Harding at Hard Cuddles, and he introduced me to doing morning swims, and just essentially we became mates. Like, he could have easily said, all this time we're spending together, like, I could charge you $200 for a session, but I think he put that aside, and we did so much in that COVID period where we enjoyed our time. We would go for rides, we would swim, spend time with his family, and look at his life and how he teaches his kids and loves his children, and that took me on that next progression. So Sykesy took me from here to here.
Yep.
Sykesy was so aware that he said, nah, time to handball to James. James took me from here to here, if you want to put it like that.
Yeah.
And then, I was away, basically.
Of that. So what were the main shifts in terms of like how you were thinking or what you were doing that you feel as though allowed that growth to happen?
I think for me, it felt like I was at that rock bottom in that that breakup. And that's very easy to say because I probably had another rock bottom when I was away recently. So it's interesting when people say I hit rock bottom. It's like, I've had a few rock bottoms, like, in my own head.
Yep. Well, and then like that's an important part of it is like it's a perception. It's like, I mean, maybe not qualified to ask you these questions, but maybe there's like maybe you can change the language of the rock bottom. It's like, I went through a tough time, or I had to, I got to the bottom of the valley and I had to figure myself out before I started climbing the next mountain. I don't know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's almost like and I guess my life is bookmarked by quotes, but it's like, upon reflection, the times of struggle are often seen as the most beautiful. Like, do you look back on those rock bottom times now as pivotal, important, wonderful, even though they were difficult?
Yeah, 100%. Without them, I wouldn't have flicked the switch to change whatever I was doing or change my mindset. So 100%, it probably sounds bad, but those rock bottoms were needed, or those real struggles were needed.
Suffering's part of the human experience, and if we don't suffer, we don't get to enjoy the flip side, because you don't feel the yin and yang or the good and bad of it all. So I think pretty much, and this is like a nice little visual cuddle for everyone watching, and audio cuddle for everyone listening, is like, know that the times if you're struggling at the moment or you're in a tough space, know that it gets better, and know that when it does get better, you'll look back on now and almost look back fondly because of what it taught you and because of what it enabled you to do. Yeah,
100%. And you see so many videos, or the cliche term of just reach out. And it's easier said than done, because I've been in the space where you just don't want to reach out to people. You don't want to ask people for help. And I suppose the word is yet. You don't want to ask yet.
Yeah.
And for me, it took, a little bit of time to ask or to say it. But, the second bottom of the valley hit that I had, if you want to call it that.
We'll work on it.
We'll
workshop it later.
Was more recently. And like and this is when I was on a Kentucky, so you're constantly with 50 people. So I was kind of forced to reach out very quickly, and that was a good thing, you know, because they're all asking me what's wrong, why'd you leave, like what's going on, and you know, I think that was a good thing straight away that I had those people there, even though I was only going to know them for a month, and then now we just become Instagram friends that like each other's stories for the next 15, 20 years. But
it's fascinating.
You know, they were there in that moment, and like I was grateful for that. And you need that struggle. Yeah,
talk me through the last 6 months. What you did, why you did it, what was the and my brain's not thinking of words today. What was the reason why you took the leap to get out of Melbourne 6 months?
I think, so that COVID 2 years, like I'd got into the habit of swimming every morning. I bought a dog, a beautiful Labrador, I love dearly. Shout out Evie if you're going to watch this later. I'll show it to you later, Evie.
That got me.
Like I'd got into this routine, and then I kept getting older, and I was like, I really wanted to move out, but then wasn't earning enough money to rent on my own. Tried to do a share house with a couple of girls that I'd never met, and that failed. And then after my pa passed, I lived alone for 6 months in his house. Loved it. Greatest experience of my life. But obviously, because it was mum's house now, I wasn't paying anything. It was just, I was sitting in it.
Yep.
And then she sold it, so I had to move back home. And when you're 25 at the time and living with mum and dad, things start
especially
to clash.
When you've experienced the other side of it.
You start to clash a bit, and you want those freedoms. And I wasn't great at communicating what I wanted to them. So it was just a bit of a butting of heads, and I'd felt trapped, basically. It was how I was feeling.
Yep.
So my ingenious idea was, I can get out by driving all the way across the country to Perth, and let's start a life in Perth.
As you do.
That was my greatest idea.
The adult version of running away.
Yeah, basically. So I'd stewed on it for a long time, and then I finally finished up in my job, and then got my car built up in the period before it, got the rooftop tent, got the awning, got all the cars set.
Yep.
And June 1st this year, I drove off and planned the whole trip, 15 days drive across to Perth, see some sights by myself, which was great because a lot of thinking time, a lot of self-reflection, a lot of, thinking about the whys and what's going on in my life, what do I want. So that was a good part of it for sure. And then got to Perth. Had about a month before I was flying to the UK. Originally I just needed to go for a wedding, so it turned from a week or two trip to, you know what, let's just make this a big, huge trip. What's the point just flying 24 hours and not seeing some stuff? So booked the Kentucky, saw family as well in the UK. And then I went on the Kentucky tour, and that was just go. And I think the age gap was a bit of an issue in my own head. There was 52 people, 43 were girls, 9 were guys. So I was trying to deal with that, and then the age gap and the go nature, and a lot of alcohol's involved in Kentucky's, and emotions fly, and then a lot of, I think, high school behaviour came out, and I didn't like that. And then I just got to a point during the trip, probably towards the back end, and I made a pretty poor choice on the trip, and then after that choice I just went into a spiral essentially, and hating myself, what I'd done, because it just wasn't me, didn't reflect my values or what I believed in and what I'd worked so hard in the 2 years prior to become, and I'd gone back in my head. And it was a real tough time because it didn't affect me like it was my now partner actually that I'd it's funny how that works, but the choice that I made affected her, but we're now in a great relationship and love her dearly. So
great result.
And then got back to Perth and just felt an ick post-trip, and an ick that just wouldn't go away, that this didn't feel right. So I just thought about it for a while and like spoke to my brother about it, and he just said, mate, you're not a failure if you come back.
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
You tried, so what? Come back. We love you. So made the call
advice.
and yeah, it was great advice. Made the call and drove back in 5 days and got back Melbourne Cup Day and surprised mum and dad. And dad bawled his eyes out, and
Love that.
now I'm here.
That's brilliant. It's the 6 month, like you know, that initial, like, this is a failure, but it's a 6 month adventure or 6 month experience that, you know, potentially the lessons that it's going to teach you are lessons that you might not have learned or might not have learned for years. So,
Yep.
like obviously you've only been back a couple of weeks, but looking back now, what do you feel about that period of your life?
Don't get me wrong, loved the whole 6 months. Overall, loved it. But yeah, those peaks and those troughs teach you so much stuff, as we've spoken about. Those struggles, I learnt so much that, hey, you know, the things you took for granted, like your morning dips and the gym that you were coming to regularly, and the walks with your dog, or just getting a cuddle from your dog, and you didn't have all those things. You kind of took those for granted, and you thought that you could go when you really need those things to help your own well-being in every single day of your life. And you know, since I've come back, it's been all right. Let's start to build those habits back up again that you were doing, like waking up at 5 and walking the dog, and then go for a dip at 6:15, and then from there, I'm still learning what I need. You know, I'm literally was sitting in my lecture before and going, I think I need to go to gym at 3 o'clock in the arvo, because that's when I'm starting to really dip in terms of my focus with study, whereas my morning is when I'm most productive. So maybe instead of using all your physical energy in the morning, let's go in the afternoon.
Yep.
So I'm still learning.
That self-awareness is something you need to continually build, because your wants and needs and priorities and things shift, right? Like we mentioned before, you're doing a master's now, so that's going to take some resources over the next few years, and you've just got to be able to and I think this is a skill within itself as a functioning human. You've got to be able to redistribute your resources to whatever is needed, because you can decide to distribute them to something that's not going to help, and you end up not having them when you need them.
Yep, 100%. And the reason we all do those things, talking about filling your cup up, that old analogy that I wasn't filling my cup up.
Yeah.
And I knew coming back here I'd be able to fill my cup up properly to be able to focus on the study and doing my Masters of Counselling and putting the effort into that and being fully invested in that, to be able to give myself to that. Also invested in my partner, which that's a whole nother kettle of fish, the fact that she lives in Brisbane, so we're going through that stuff at the moment too, trying to work out
sucker for punishment,
how the hell do we do this. So
that's exciting. That's another adventure that you get to go on.
Oh, huge adventure. We've got the next 4 months booked of flights to see each other, so that's all sorted for sure. But we're sitting here going, it's going to cost a lot of money to do this.
All good things do.
Absolutely, but I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it.
What does the future look like for you?
Are we talking in this next
It's an
second?
intentionally ambiguous question.
Who knows? Who knows what the future holds? Because
Love that.
I could wake up tomorrow and just want to do something totally different. But I will say, for my partner's sake, I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and leave you. Don't worry. That's nothing to do with my future. But I don't know.
What are you most excited for?
For the sun to shine in Melbourne for once, because I've just heard that it's been horrendous.
It's been good the last couple of days.
I don't know. I'm excited that I'm seeing a psychologist and she's helping me understand my shit, and helping me bring that inner child back out. I'm excited to see that child again, that primary school James that has been pushed away for so long. I'm excited to build my dream, essentially, to have my own business, counselling business, to be in the same place as my partner, wherever that's going to be. I don't know.
Love that.
Just excited for for all those things.
Good from you. Any more to add? Any more for any more?
Oh, mate, I could sit here for ages. I just
I know.
love talking about
We've got
myself.
shit to do.
I'm
sure we'll do another episode at some point.
my story's just so great. Nah, kidding. It's not. I don't know.
Love your work, mate. Keep doing good things.
You too, mate. Thanks for having me.